Daniel Hart filled the doorway of my room, arms crossed, his expression a mix of disapproval and exhaustion I'd seen all my life. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of command. It was never a request. It was never a discussion. It was always an order. I sat at my desk, staring at the glowing screen of my laptop. An email still shone there, fresh and unbelievable. Bank of Westbridge, wire transfer confirmed. My heart pounded, not from fear of eviction, but from the absurdity of the moment. Because only 20 minutes earlier, I had won the foreclosure auction. The house they were kicking me out of was already mine. I snapped the laptop closed with a soft click, careful to hide the satisfaction rising in my chest. "I'll start packing tomorrow," I said calmly. Daniel gave a stiff nod, clearly relieved I wasn't going to argue. That was how they liked me, compliant, silent, useful. For years, I had been the reliable one. The daughter who picked up the bills when money ran short. The one who stayed close to home for college to save tuition, while my younger sister, Ava, jetted off to California to study lifestyle branding at a private university no one could afford. And now I was disposable. Minutes later, Marin Hart stepped inside, her tone softer but her intent no less cruel. "Honey, I know this is sudden," she began, her voice laced with that syrupy patience she used when trying to justify the unjustifiable. "But this is what's best for the family. Ava's new coaching business could really take off this time." This time. I nearly laughed. How many times had I heard that phrase? Right on cue, Ava burst in, phone in hand, practically glowing with excitement. "I'm thinking sage green walls for my coaching videos," she announced, tossing her platinum blonde hair over her shoulder. "It's perfect for my brand aesthetic." My jaw tightened. Sage green. The irony stung. Ava had already burned through our parents' savings on a yoga studio that collapsed within months, an organic smoothie bar that bled money, and a wellness lifestyle blog that never took off. Now she wanted my room for her next grand scheme. My eyes swept the space, the pale blue walls I had painted when I was 16, the window seat where I had spent hours reading, the shelves lined with books that had shaped me. This wasn't just a room. It was my room. But Ava didn't care. She never had. "Sage green sounds nice," I said flatly, stretching my lips into a bland smile. Because what Ava didn't know, what none of them knew, was that in 3 days she wouldn't own a single claim to this room. Or this house. They had no idea how deep in trouble they were. For months, I had watched Daniel scramble to keep the mortgage current. I tracked every late payment, every desperate shuffle of money, every dollar funneled into Ava's so-called business ventures. And then, 3 weeks ago, I found it, a foreclosure notice, folded in a drawer in his office, like a shameful secret. At first, I stared at the document, willing the words to blur, to change. But they didn't. Our family home was about to be seized. Because of Daniel's weakness. Because of Marin's blind hope. Because of Ava's endless greed. And while they dismissed me as the boring, predictable daughter, I had been quietly building something real. They thought I was just an accountant. They were wrong. Over the last 5 years, I had built a portfolio of 11 rental properties scattered across Westbridge. 11 doors that brought in steady, compounding income. And this house. This would be number 12. The house didn't feel like my childhood home anymore. It wasn't the place of laughter and memories. It wasn't the space of conditional love and silent sacrifices. No, now it was something else entirely. It was an investment. It was mine. The next few days, I played my role perfectly. I packed a suitcase with clothes, a box with books, a bag with keepsakes. I left the rest as it was. Let them believe I was quietly preparing to leave. Meanwhile, Ava wasted no time erasing me. My bed was dismantled and dragged into the garage. Ring lights and cameras appeared in the corners. Crystals and yoga mats spread across the floor like weeds. Every time I walked past, she was there, arranging her vision board, recording bubbly videos for her non-existent audience, humming with fake optimism. I said nothing. Marin and Daniel hovered awkwardly in the background, guilty but self-assured. Guilty, because deep down they knew this was wrong. Self-assured, because they had convinced themselves it was the right thing for the family. And I made it easy for them. I didn't argue. My calmness only reassured them that they were right. That I would obediently disappear. They didn't realize they were the ones already being erased. Thursday morning, I sat in a glass-walled office downtown across from Cassandra Vale, my lawyer. She flipped through the stack of closing documents, her manicured nails clicking against the polished table. "Everything is finalized," she said, sliding the papers toward me. And there it was, at the top in bold print, Lila Hart, legal owner. I inhaled slowly, letting the satisfaction burn through me like fire. Cassandra studied me for a moment. "Are you sure you want to be there when they find out?" I didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." She nodded knowingly. "Then tomorrow, the truth comes out. Tomorrow. The day the house of cards would collapse." That night, from the top of the stairs, I overheard them again in the kitchen. "Lila's taking this so well," Marin murmured, as if to reassure herself. "It's about time she left her comfort zone," Daniel replied, his tone clipped. "She'll land on her feet," Ava chimed in, smirking. "She always does." I smirked into my teacup. If only they knew how right they were. The next morning, I woke with a strange calm. Today wasn't like other days. Today I wasn't the daughter being pushed aside. Today I wasn't the afterthought. Today, I was the owner. I dressed with precision, a navy blue suit, tailored and sharp. I smoothed my usually plain brown hair into a sleek style. Around my neck, I clasped my grandmother's pearl necklace, the only family heirloom that had never been tainted by betrayal. Downstairs, Ava's laughter floated through the halls as she chatted on the phone about manifesting abundance. Marin poured coffee. Daniel rustled the newspaper. They still thought I was going to my boring accounting job. They still thought I was theirs to control. But today, everything would shatter. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I parked in the driveway. The house loomed in front of me, familiar and fragile. I gripped the steering wheel, steadying my breath. Through the open door, Ava's voice rang out, bright and shrill. "Yeah, it's going to be perfect for my brand. The energy is so much better now." I stepped inside. Daniel was hammering a whiteboard into the wall of what used to be my room. Ava stood nearby, hands on her hips, directing him like a spoiled producer. The floor was covered in yoga mats and vision boards. My desk shoved into the hall. My shelves stripped bare. My bed, gone. She had erased me. Perfect timing. Ava chirped when she saw me. "I hope you don't mind, but I started early. Had some guys from the gym move your stuff to the garage." Something inside me snapped. "Actually," I said, my voice sharper than a blade, "I need everyone to stop. Right now." The room froze. Daniel turned, brows furrowed. Ava blinked in irritation. "Lila, what's your problem?" she demanded. I didn't answer. Because at that moment, the doorbell rang. Right. On time, the doorbell echoed through the house like a final judgment. I walked downstairs with deliberate steps, each one slow and steady, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor. My hand gripped the polished brass handle, and when I pulled the door open, Cassandra Vale stood there, briefcase in hand, her navy suit crisp, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Hart," she greeted, her voice smooth, professional, edged with power. Behind me, Marin appeared in the hallway, her eyes wide, her hands wringing the dish towel she held. "An attorney," she stammered. "Yes," Cassandra replied coolly. "I represent your daughter, Lila. We have some important documents to review." Marin's face paled. Ava appeared at the top of the stairs, smirking. "Oh my God," she laughed. "Are you seriously lawyering up because you're mad about moving out? That's so dramatic, Lila." I didn't respond. I simply stepped aside. "Come in, Cassandra." The click of her heels against the floor was like a gavel striking wood. The front door creaked again as Daniel walked in from the driveway. His tie was loosened, his face already tired. He stopped short when he saw Cassandra in the foyer. His eyes narrowed. "What's going on?" Cassandra extended her hand calmly. "Mr. Hart, I'm Cassandra Vale, your daughter's attorney. I'm here regarding the property at 1242 Westbridge Lane." Daniel froze, his brows furrowing. What about it? His gaze darted from me to Marin to Cassandra. I pulled the thick envelope from her briefcase and stepped forward. 3 weeks ago, I found a foreclosure notice in your desk, I said evenly. The one you hid from us. The one that explained how you remortgaged this house to fund Ava's businesses until you pushed it past the point of no return. The air snapped with silence. Daniel's jaw tightened. That's none of your. It is my business, I cut in sharply, my voice rising for the first time. Because as of this morning, the foreclosure sale is complete. I held his gaze as I delivered the final blow. I bought this house. Ava's laugh died instantly in her throat. What? She whispered, her smirk vanishing. Marin swayed against the banister, gripping it like the room was spinning. That's not possible, she whispered. Daniel's face drained of color. He snatched the envelope from my hand and ripped it open, scanning the documents like a man trying to read his own death sentence. Cassandra stepped forward, calm and professional. Here is the deed transfer, she said, sliding a second document onto the console table. It clearly states that as of today, the property at 1242 Westbridge Lane is owned outright by Ms. Lila Hart. The sound of the words hit harder than thunder. Marin gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Daniel's lips moved, but no words came out. Ava shook her head furiously. No, she said. No, you can't do this. You can't just. I already did, I said, my tone sharp, final. Cassandra set her briefcase down on the dining table and withdrew a stack of neatly bound papers. Mr. and Mrs. Hart, you have 2 options. You can sign this legal lease agreement with fair market rent and continue to reside here as tenants under your daughter's ownership. Or, she let the silence drag, her eyes cold. You can vacate the property within 30 days. The shift in power was absolute. For the first time in my life, Daniel had nothing to say. Ava's voice cracked, shrill, breaking the silence. This is insane. You think you can just come in here, wave around some papers, and suddenly you're in charge? This is our house. No, I said evenly, turning toward her. This is my house. And for the first time, you're going to learn what consequences feel like. Her face twisted. She let out a shaky laugh, but her bravado was crumbling. You won't actually make us pay rent. That's cruel. What's cruel, I replied, is using someone else's sacrifices to fuel your reckless fantasies. What's cruel is watching me pay your bills for years and then throwing me out of my own room. This. I gestured to the lease on the table. This is called accountability. Daniel finally sank into a chair, his face ashen. He stared down at the deed transfer, his authority shattered. He had lived his entire life as the head of this house, the one who made the rules. Now he was powerless. Marin's eyes glistened. Lila, sweetheart, she whispered. Can't we just talk about this as a family? We are talking, I said, my voice calm, unyielding. But this isn't family business anymore. This is legal business. The words sliced through her like a blade. Cassandra closed her briefcase with a snap. You have until the end of the week to decide. Lease or vacate. Ava stormed upstairs, her footsteps pounding against the floor like a tantrum. Seconds later, a door slammed. Through the walls, I could hear her muffled sobs, not of guilt or regret, but of rage. She had always gotten everything she wanted. Not this time. Downstairs, the silence hung heavy, pressing against the walls like a storm waiting to break. The next morning, the house felt different. Tense, brittle, like a kingdom after a coup. No one had packed. No one had left. But the power had shifted. At breakfast, Ava marched into the kitchen, arms crossed, chin lifted high, still clinging to her delusions. She dropped her phone on the counter and sneered. I sent you the rent. I raised an eyebrow, sipping my coffee. Did you? Yes, she snapped. 500, via Venmo. You should have gotten the notification. I pulled out my phone. Sure enough, the message blinked, Ava Hart sent you $500. I set the phone down and shook my head. Rent must be paid by check or bank transfer, I said smoothly. No personal apps. This is business, Not brunch with friends. Her face flushed red. That's ridiculous. Nobody uses checks anymore. Professional landlords do, I replied, my tone clipped. She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. This is why no one takes you seriously, Lila. You act like you're some big-shot businesswoman, but you're just, she stopped herself, biting down on the word. I leaned forward. I'm just what, Ava? Her jaw clenched. She didn't finish the sentence. Because she knew. I was the one who had saved the house from total ruin. I was the one who owned every inch of this space. And she hated me for it. Before Ava could spit out another excuse, Daniel pushed his chair back with a heavy scrape and stood. I'll handle it, he muttered. He grabbed his jacket and left. Minutes later, he returned from the bank with a cashier's check in hand. He slid it across the table, his face grim. Just this once. She needs time to figure things out. I took the check, folding it neatly into my ledger. Yes, I said softly. She does. So do you. That night, as I lay in my reclaimed room, I realized the tide had turned. This was no longer their kingdom. It was mine. And this was only the beginning. 3 weeks later, I was working in my office, a real one this time, not the cramped corner they once shoved me into, when raised voices drifted upstairs. The sound was sharp, jagged, filled with panic. I closed my laptop slowly, listening. Then Ava's voice cut through, shrill and desperate. What do you mean you won't co-sign? I moved quietly to the top of the staircase, leaning just enough to see into the living room below. Ava stood in front of our parents, her phone clutched in one hand, her face contorted with disbelief. I need this, she said, her voice breaking. My new coaching program is going to work. This time it's different. I just need the capital to launch, and if you co-sign. No. Daniel's voice was firm, the sharpest I'd ever heard it aimed at her. His words landed like stones. Ava blinked, stunned. Excuse me? No, he repeated, slower this time, like he wanted her to hear every syllable. I'm not signing another loan. I'm not mortgaging my future for your fantasies. Marin shifted nervously beside him, her hands twisting in her lap. But for once, she didn't rush to soothe Ava. She just sat there, silent, her gaze downcast. I stayed perfectly still, watching, absorbing the scene like a spectator at a long-awaited play. Ava's face crumpled. You've always supported me, she whispered. You've always believed in me. Why now? Why? Because we nearly lost the house because of you, Daniel snapped, his voice like a whip. His chest heaved, his eyes blazing. We'd be on the street right now if it weren't for your sister. The silence that followed was thick and crushing. Ava's lips parted, but no sound came. Her phone slipped from her fingers and landed on the rug with a dull thud. She shook her head slowly, like if she denied it hard enough, reality would bend. You're siding with her, she whispered. Marin finally looked up, her voice trembling. She's charging us below market rent, Ava. She's giving us a chance to stay here, to fix our mistakes. That's more than most people would do. I blinked, taken aback. That was the closest thing to gratitude I had ever heard from her. But Ava. She wasn't ready to face reality. Her face twisted in rage, her eyes wet with angry tears. She's holding it over our heads, she screamed, her voice cracking. She's punishing us. She's acting like she's better than all of us. No, Daniel cut in sharply. She's acting like the adult. Something you should have been years ago. Ava staggered back as though he'd struck her. Her breathing hitched, her hands curling into fists. It was happening. For the first time in my life, my father wasn't shielding her. He wasn't protecting her from consequences. Ava's voice cracked. This isn't fair, she whispered. I almost laughed out loud from the top of the stairs. Fair? She had no idea what fair was. 4 years, fairness meant I carried her failures on my back, while she basked in applause she never earned. 4 years, fair meant I stayed quiet while they handed her the world. Now, the curtain had been pulled back. Ava's breathing grew ragged, her shoulders trembling as she snatched her phone from the rug and stormed toward the staircase. For a second, her eyes locked on mine. Hatred burned there, raw and feral. But underneath, I saw something else for the first time. Fear. She knew the safety net was gone. She knew the ground beneath her had crumbled. And she had no idea how to stand on her own. The weeks that followed were strangely quiet. The house, once filled with her constant chatter about branding strategies and business ideas, now echoed with silence. Ava shut herself in her room for hours at a time. Occasionally, I heard muffled phone calls, arguments, pleas. But the confident swagger, the endless optimism, it was gone. Daniel moved differently, too. He no longer barked orders across the table. He no longer carried himself like the unshakable patriarch. Instead, he watched me. Quietly, thoughtfully, with something almost resembling respect. And Marin, she avoided me at first, embarrassed maybe. But one night, as I was making tea in the kitchen, she lingered in the doorway. "Lila," she said softly. I turned. She was wringing her hands, her eyes downcast. "Thank you," she whispered. For saving the house. For giving us time." Her voice cracked on the last word. I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything more. Because for once, she wasn't speaking as a mother trying to placate everyone. She was speaking as a woman who knew she'd nearly lost everything. Ava didn't break all at once. It happened slowly, like glass cracking under pressure. It started with her Instagram posts. The daily hustle culture stories, the videos about abundance and manifestation, they grew sparse, then disappeared entirely. Then the deliveries stopped. No more boxes of branded merchandise, no more ring lights or crystal shipments. One afternoon, I came home to find her sitting at the dining table, papers spread out before her, her hair messy, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. She looked up at me, and for the first time in her life, she seemed small. "Lila," she said quietly. Can you show me how to actually build a business?" Her voice trembled on the last word. I froze. My sister, the one who had mocked me, dismissed me, pushed me aside, was asking for my help. I studied her face. She wasn't bluffing this time. The arrogance was gone. The bravado had crumbled. In its place was something I'd never seen in her before. Humility. I set my bag down slowly. "I'll help," I said. "But only on my terms." She nodded quickly, almost desperately. "Anything. No shortcuts," I said firmly. "No handouts. No begging mom and dad to bail you out. You're going to do the work. Real work." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. "I'm ready." For the first time in years, I believed her. Weeks passed. And to my surprise, Ava worked. Late nights, early mornings. She studied, she drafted, she reworked. I sat with her at the kitchen table, walking her through business plans, projections, research. For once, she didn't argue, didn't roll her eyes. She listened. Slowly, something began to take shape. Not a grandiose empire, not a flashy brand dripping with buzzwords, but a real business. A small but legitimate digital marketing service for local businesses. Mitchell Digital Solutions. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't perfect. But it was hers. And she had earned it. Meanwhile, Daniel and Marin had started to change too. One evening, Daniel sat across from me in the living room, a book in his hand. Not a novel, a finance manual. "I enrolled in a business course," he said, not looking up. His voice was almost sheepish. "Marin's doing one too. Community college. We figured, it's about time we stopped relying on everyone else." I stared at him, almost stunned. My father, the man who once called me a disappointment, was learning from my example. He finally looked up. His eyes softened, and for the first time in my life, he said the words I had waited to hear. "I'm proud of you, Lila." The air caught in my throat. Those words, simple as they were, cracked something open inside me. Because this time, I knew I had earned them. By the time autumn rolled around, the house had changed. The battles, the resentment, the endless chaos, it had shifted into something steadier, stronger. I offered Daniel and Marin a rent-to-own agreement. They had proven they could be responsible, and I didn't want to cut them out entirely. Ava signed a lease for her own small office space, proudly paying the deposit with her own earnings. She even sent me a text one night, "Thank you. Not just for the office. For showing me the right way." I smiled at the message, replying simply, "You did the work. I just showed you the door." One evening, I sat at my window seat, the same one where I'd once stared out at the world as a girl desperate to escape. The house looked different now. Not because of the paint or the furniture, but because for the first time in years, it wasn't a place of chaos. It was a place of growth, of boundaries, of renewal. And as the autumn leaves rustled against the glass, I realized something I never thought I'd feel again in these walls. Peace. The transformation of our family didn't happen overnight. It came in waves, sometimes small and almost imperceptible, sometimes loud enough to shake the walls. There were still arguments. Ava slipped into her old patterns more than once, slamming doors or storming out when a client cancelled or a project failed. Daniel still barked sometimes, the way he always had, but now his voice carried less dominance and more desperation. Marin still hovered, trying to smooth rough edges. But there was progress. And progress, I realized, was enough. One crisp Saturday morning, I found Ava sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by papers. But this time, they weren't half-baked ideas scribbled on neon sticky notes. They were invoices. Real invoices. Paid ones. She looked up at me, her hair pulled into a messy bun, a pencil tucked behind her ear. 2 clients this month, she said. Her voice was steady but cautious, like she was afraid to celebrate too soon. "That's 2 more than you had last month," I said simply, pouring coffee. Her lips twitched. "I guess so." I leaned against the counter, watching her. She had changed. Not entirely, not perfectly, but enough that I could see it. The girl who once mocked me for being boring now looked at me with something that resembled respect. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild something between us. A week later, Daniel knocked on my office door. He looked uneasy, almost like a teenager approaching a teacher. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. I nodded, closing my laptop. He stepped inside, holding a folder in his hands. "Your mother and we've been talking about the rent-to-own agreement." I stiffened slightly, bracing for another negotiation, another plea. But instead, he set the folder on my desk. Inside were receipts, payment records, and a bank statement. "We've been saving," he said. "Sticking to the plan. We're serious about this." His voice cracked on the last word. I flipped through the papers. They weren't perfect. But they were real. Consistent. Disciplined. And for the first time in my life, I saw my father not as the immovable wall that had always stood in my way, but as a man trying to learn, to adapt, to change. "You're making progress," I said finally. Daniel's shoulders sagged with relief. "We're trying, Lila. We really are." And I believed him. The real turning point, though, came from Ava. One evening, she knocked on my bedroom door. It was late, past midnight, and I was curled up with a book. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I nodded, surprised. She slipped inside, closing the door behind her. Her eyes were red, her voice raw. "I got rejected today," she whispered. I set the book down. Rejected. A big client. I thought they were going to sign, but they didn't. Her hands trembled. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them they were wrong, to blame the universe or the timing or whatever excuse I usually make. But I prompted gently. But I didn't. I asked what I could do better next time. I listened. Her voice cracked, and she pressed a hand to her chest. And for the first time, I realized, maybe it's not about manifesting abundance or chasing shortcuts. Maybe it's about the work. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Lila. For everything. For the years I dismissed you. For the way I treated you. For making you feel like you didn't matter." The words hit me harder than I expected. I had waited years, decades, for an apology that never came. And here it was. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "You hurt me," I said honestly. "Over and over. And you made me feel invisible." "I know." Her voice broke. "And I can't change the past. But I want to change now. Silence hung heavy between us. Finally, I nodded. Then prove it. Her eyes widened, and she nodded quickly. I will. And for the first time, I believed her. Months passed. Slowly but surely, Ava's business grew. Not into an empire, not into the grand fantasy she once dreamed of, but into something steady, something real. Daniel and Marin made their payments, sticking to the rent-to-own agreement like clockwork. Their pride softened, replaced by humility. They even enrolled in community classes, sitting side by side in lecture halls with students half their age. And me. I thrived. My rental properties continued to grow, my portfolio expanding beyond Westbridge into neighboring towns. I was no longer just the boring accountant they once dismissed. I was a businesswoman, a strategist, a provider. And for the first time in my life, I was free. The final test came one evening in spring. We were all sitting around the dining table, something we hadn't done in years without it ending in chaos. Ava looked across at me, her eyes clear. I'm moving out, she said. Marin's fork clinked against her plate. Moving out? Ava nodded. I've saved enough for a small apartment. It's time. Her voice didn't waver. There was no bravado, no arrogance, just quiet certainty. Daniel studied her for a long moment before nodding. That's good, he said softly. That's right. And just like that, the cycle broke. That night, I sat in my reclaimed bedroom, looking out at the house. The same walls that had once suffocated me now felt different. Not because they had changed, but because I had. This house had been my prison. Then my battlefield. Then my victory. And now, it was something else. It was proof. Proof that sometimes the only way to rebuild is to let things shatter first. Proof that even the most broken families can learn, adapt, and grow. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Ava. Thank you. For everything. I smiled, typing back, you did the work. I just showed you the door. For years, I thought being the dependable one made me weak. That being the responsible one meant I'd always be invisible. But I was wrong. Being dependable made me strong. Being responsible gave me power. And when the time came, it was those very qualities, the ones they mocked, that allowed me to rise. Now, when I walk through the halls of house number 27, I don't hear echoes of the past. I hear laughter. Quiet conversation. The hum of a family learning to be better. The house that nearly broke us had, in the end, rebuilt us. And for the first time in a long time, I knew this wasn't just a house anymore. It was home.